a little more rainy than I was anticipating. It said only like 30% when we left. But I think we can just chill under this boulder for a little bit and wait it out.
I'm not too concerned about it. I think it'll pass. The bouldering might get slippery.
That's a good point.
So let's give it 5 minutes, see if it's, slows down a bit. Yeah.
Making this dinner?
Yeah. Yeah, what are we having? Beef stroganoff? Louisiana red beans.
Welcome back to Maps with No Roads, back in the Adirondacks, but this time bringing Ariana with me. Now, Ariana and I have been on quite a few adventures together. Acadia National Park, the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico, overlanding Arizona. Now, Ariana, you are an environmental scientist. I know you've experienced different climes and places all throughout the planet, but this was your first time in the High Peaks Wilderness. So tell me, what did you think of it? What were your impressions?
It is big and it is wild. There was absolutely no sign of human civilization. I think one of my favorite parts was seeing those trail maintenance folks actually hiking the trail with their backpacks and like all of their tools. Like there's no chainsaws allowed. So just the level of preservation was probably the most impressive aspect of the Adirondacks. I absolutely loved the spruces, the firs, the pines mixed in with the deciduous forests and all the different forms of wetlands that we saw, and just the important ecological function this all has as the transition to the more boreal forests of the northern parts of the Canadian Shield. I found that all just absolutely fascinating. The hydrology in these mountains are insane. There's so much water. And these are the hydrological sources of the Hudson River. And just growing up in New Jersey, for me, that was almost like a spiritual thing, just being able to drink from these headwaters and know that it eventually drains to the Hudson River. At least most of these tributaries do. That just felt uniquely special to me. And the moss. I loved the moss. It was lush and thick, and it covered the forest floor, unlike almost anything I've ever seen before. And that just created this wonderful place for the mushrooms to take over. I've never seen so many species of mushrooms in one canopy floor. It was wonderful. If I could have moss as lawn, I would.
So what would you say was the highlight for you of this trip in the High Peaks Wilderness?
Oh, that's an easy one. Reaching Lake Colden. Beyond just the kind of awe, like the awe that it just strikes inside of you, I couldn't help but to just imagine myself where I am on the planet and sort of zoom out from that, right? Like I'm a bird and I see exactly where I am on the planet, and I'm zooming out and I'm still in the center of this wild preserve. And for me, just that knowledge, just knowing how deep in the wilderness I was the best part, because it just sort of deepens this appreciation. And you're not only seeing this beautiful lake, but you have to work to get there.
Yeah, it's a challenge to get out there. That's one thing I love about these wilderness zones of you are a day's walk away from civilization at minimum.
Right.
I don't know, something very peaceful and serene about that. So that was the most beautiful part. What would you say was the biggest challenge for you?
The weather conditions weren't exactly what I was expecting. And I think just because of the geology of the mountains, when it rains, those boulders are slippery. So having to boulder across Avalanche Pass, that was difficult. We were already, 5-6 hours into our hike, and I could feel it in my legs a little bit, but now we have to boulder on wet, slippery rocks. You're basically screwed. And that was definitely a little bit challenging, a little frightening, but just had to take it one step at a time. But yeah, that was the most challenging aspect, bouldering on wet, slippery rocks.
Yeah, I think that's got to be one of the biggest beginner tips for anyone planning a hike out here is plan for variable weather. That first night, it had been raining so much that our campsite was pretty flooded out. We were struggling to find some high ground so we wouldn't have to sleep in a puddle. But luckily, the second night, we were able to secure a lean-to. And what was that experience like? How would you rate sleeping in a lean-to versus a tent?
Oh, the lean-to is just wonderfully convenient. You don't have to pitch the tent. For me, the biggest the biggest problem with tents is that you have to unzip and zip quickly and take your shoes off and take them on. And I have a tiny little bladder, so it's just a lot for me. I love it, don't get me wrong, but I felt a little spoiled in the lean-to. I could see bugs being a problem. For us, I didn't really have that much trouble with the bugs, but I think if someone was really, really committed to sleeping in a lean-to, you can just go prepared with a mosquito net even, or just have your bug spray readily available. So I would say go with the lean-to if you have to choose.
As far as tips for beginners looking to backpack in the Adirondacks for the first time, what are some basic things that you would tell someone preparing to head out?
Well, the High Peaks Wilderness is pretty well known for the need to use bear-resistant canisters. So we packed all of our food in there. However, do not underestimate how hungry you're gonna get. The fact that we didn't have snacks readily available in our pockets and we kept postponing, like, okay, we'll stop for a snack because then we'll have to take the backpack off, we'll have to rummage through it, take the canister out, unlock it, open it, take what we need. It just seemed like such a big thing that we kept postponing it. And by the time we actually did eat, I was hungry. And that's something you don't want to let yourself get that hungry. So definitely keep snacks readily available in your pocket. Of course, before you sleep, put everything in the canister, that's for sure. But while you're hiking, you're going to want to have easy access to that granola bar. So that's my first tip.
It's a great point. Definitely, one, proper nutrition, incredibly important while backpacking out there. You are burning way more calories than you used to. So having those snacks available, and like you said, the bear canister, that is a requirement in the Adirondacks. You can get away with bear bag hangs in a lot of places, but the Adirondacks requires a very specific black bear canister that is bear proof. And another bonus tip, when you're packing your food in it, pack it in reverse order that you're going to eat it, because it packs pretty tight. So make sure like your last night's meal or the last breakfast or whatever is at the bottom and you're packing reverse order. Second tip, I would say start with short trips. If you're a beginner backpacker, you want to do some shakedown cruises. There's a place here near us I like to do. Anytime I get a new piece of gear, I like to go on a quick 2-mile backpacking trip where I'll go up and stay for the night just to test out the new gear before I bring it out far into the wilderness. But you want to test out your stuff. You want to test out your legs, see what you're prepared for. But start out small and see what you can handle. Don't overdo it. Don't overestimate your own ability. That's how you get in trouble out there.
So I guess next tip, if I may, cut your toenails. Don't go out there with those long toenails, so every time you're going down those steep trails, you're jamming them in your hiking boots. It hurts. I'm talking as short as you can, you cut those toenails. That's one of my tips for sure.
Okay, next tip, pack light. This is not glamping. This is not car camping. You got to carry everything on your back, and you're going to be hiking for miles, and those ounces add up quick. So make sure you're packing the essentials. You want to be prepared for all weather. So make sure you got a weather layer, you got a warming layer. It's going to get chilly at night, but make sure you're trying to cut ounces where you can and keeping the essentials. Now, everyone's got their luxury items. I like to bring a little camp pillow. That's not for everybody, but it definitely helps me sleep better. If I'm sleeping better, I'm gonna have a better hike. So that's what's important to me. You can definitely pick and choose your luxury items. I know some people like to have a separate mug for coffee so they can sip on coffee while they're having breakfast. So, pick and choose your luxury items, but make sure you pack smart and light.
Next tip would be to understand the terrain and conditions. The Adirondacks has diverse terrain, to say the least. We're talking rugged mountains, dense forests, muddy trails, primitive trails. You can't even really tell if they're a trail or a stream. And then you have these slabs, these really steep rock slabs where there's nothing really to grab onto, and you're just sort of trying to climb it and find every divot you can just to get some kind of leverage. Yeah, it's pretty rugged out there, and it gets quite steep and quite rocky and quite muddy. So just being as prepared as possible and ready to adapt.
Branching off of that, our final tip is research and plan and emergency preparedness. Before you go out there, you got to have a plan. I usually spend weeks going over the maps and the routes, figuring out the best way to go, trying to figure out the challenges I'm going to face before I actually have to face them. And being prepared for things to go wrong. Before you go out there, you should let someone know back home where you're going to be, how many days you're going to be out there. You got to bring not only your phone with an electronic map, make sure you download those maps before you go out in the wilderness. There's no cell phone signal out there. Bring paper maps as a backup to make sure you know how to read a topographical map. Have the compass with you. I personally like to bring my own personal locator beacon, the Garmin InReach Mini. This allows me to use satellite communications anywhere on the planet to contact loved ones back home, shoot them a text saying I'm safe or I made it out of the wilderness. Usually, whenever I set up camp or break down camp, I send a text to Ariana if I'm solo, letting her know that I'm safe, everything's good to go. But be prepared for things to not go as planned. Be prepared to cut things short. Be prepared to turn back. As I have often said, the goal is not to make it to the summit. The goal is making it back to the parking lot alive. And that's all we got for these beginner tips for backpacking Adirondacks. If you are using this video to help plan your trip, I want to hear about your adventure down in the comments below. That's all we have for you for now. We'll see you on the next one.